The Marvel Cinematic Universe has cast many people over the course of its 20-plus films, and many more castings are on the way, including some big-name actors joining the ranks. But what sometimes gets lost in the hustle and bustle of making massively successful films is that a lot of these actors and actresses got their big breaks because of their Marvel roles. Some even had their careers saved because of it. Can you guess who these actors and actresses are? Allow us to show you 7 actors before and after they got the call from Marvel. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Number 7. Robert Downey Jr. There's honestly no better place to start than with Robert Downey Jr., because in all honesty, the MCU begins and ends with him in many respects. He was the first MCU film via Iron Man, and many felt the MCU ended a major part of its life when he died in Avengers Endgame. But if you rewind the clock to before Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr. wasn't exactly the biggest or best name in Hollywood. In fact, he was kind of an outcast. You see, he was a major up-and-coming star once upon a time, and then he got into major trouble with the law, including being arrested for various things. However, after getting clean, he started doing smaller roles in films before being offered the chance to be Tony Stark. He accepted, knocked it out of the ballpark, and the rest of the MCU is history as a result. And of course, after he got and owned the role of Tony Stark, he got to do a whole bunch of other films, both serious and funny. He did 2 Sherlock Holmes films with him as the titular detective, and a third is apparently on the way. He did the comedy Due Date, he did the very serious film The Judge with Robert Duvall, and he recently did Dolittle, which we all regret him making. The point here is that Iron Man really did save the career of Downey, and he really is grateful for all the chances Marvel gave him to shine, because his life would be vastly different without the role. Number 6. Chris Evans. Heading now to his fellow Avengers leader, Chris Evans also had a very interesting time in Hollywood before ending up in the MCU. Mainly because while Chris Evans was a good actor, he didn't really get to show it that much. He had the typical life of a young actor for a long time in regards to him doing indie films and bit parts in bigger films. He did do some big roles here and there, but few of them stuck out. Many will remember him as the first Johnny Storm from the 2 Fantastic Four films, which are a bit divisive, and according to Evans himself, he was uncomfortable looking back at them because he felt they could have been better. He did various other films after that, including the cult classic Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, where he was one of the League of Evil Exes, and finally he got the role of Steve Rogers, aka Captain America. And believe it or not, he immediately turned down the offer because of his previous superhero experience in Fantastic Four. However, Robert Downey Jr. calmed him down a bit and told him to accept it, and people were blown away by his performance in the first Avenger, and especially its sequel, Winter Soldier. After finding his path via Captain America, Evans went on to both act and direct in various films and series, including the movie adaptation of Snowpiercer, which was praised as one of the best movies of the year, and eventually doing the smash hit Knives Out, where he gave a very un-Steve Rogers-like performance, meaning he was a jerk character. Evans has been very open about his acting life and the stress it's caused him, but he sees himself as an advocate for doing things like getting therapy and admitting flaws so you can move forward. And that's exactly what his career is doing post-MCU. Number 5. Chris Hemsworth. Chris Hemsworth is another unique tale of fame via Marvel, because for a while, by his own account, he wondered if acting would ever work out for him. He had done things like soap operas and small parts in films both in his native home of Australia and the United States, but it wasn't really paying off for a while. Then, he got cast in the movie reboot of Star Trek, where he played James T. Kirk, and people were floored by his performance. This eventually led him to getting the role of Thor, which gave him an even bigger outlet and viewing scope in terms of the world audience, and after dominating as the God of Thunder, he got a bunch of other films. You may recall him in the all-female Ghostbusters or Men in Black International, Cabin in the Woods, Rush, and the 2020 Netflix film Extraction. Ironically, his success with these films has been hit or miss, but because of his looks and acting skills, he gets a lot of chances to make these films successes, and it's not hard to say why. Number 4. Chris Pratt. Okay, if you won't ask the question, we will. Why does Marvel hire so many Chris's? The world may never know. Outside of Robert Downey Jr., you could argue that Chris Pratt had the biggest boom in his career after becoming a part of the MCU. Because when James Gunn was asked whether he'd consider Chris Pratt for the role of Peter Quill in Guardians of the Galaxy, the director replied, "Isn't that the fat guy from Parks and Rec?" Yep, before he was Peter Quill, he was Andy Dwyer on Parks and Rec. Fun fact, He was only supposed to be on the show for a little while, but Pratt nailed the character so much they kept him around, and he became a breakout character in every way. Then he would go on to do the Lego Movie and GOTG, and became one of the biggest names in all of Hollywood basically overnight because of his performances. After GOTG particularly, he was cast in Jurassic World, which broke all kinds of box office records. He was cast in Passengers, the remake of The Magnificent Seven, Moneyball, the Pixar film Onward, and more to come. Pratt is a leading man in Hollywood, and that's hard to deny. Number 3. Scarlett Johansson. Most people forget that Scarlett Johansson honestly has been a part of the MCU for a while, as she debuted in Iron Man 2. Also important to note is that she had quite the career before the MCU. She was either in movies directed by legends like Woody Allen, or she was doing Broadway and getting nominated for her performances. However, once she became Black Widow and kept being brought back for various sized roles in the films, her star grew even more. She continued to do Broadway but got cast in various big-name films including Her, which earned her awards, as well as Lucy, Ghost in the Shell, Marriage Story, Jojo Rabbit, and more. And if it wasn't for 2020, her first solo film as Black Widow would have been out to own right now, but we'll have to wait for 2021 for it to emerge. Still, Scarlett Johansson is a major player in Hollywood, and that doesn't look to change anytime soon. After all, if you didn't hear, she'd play a tree if offered. Number 2. Michael B. Jordan. We had to make mention of Michael B. Jordan because of his 2 superhero performances and the impact they had on him. He too was Johnny Storm once, in a more recent Fantastic Four film that was such a bomb it still pains people to think it existed. And while Jordan had some success before it, that really hurt his career. He did make a bounce back though via Creed, which would get a sequel. Then he was cast as Eric Clemenger in Black Panther, and everything changed. His role as Clemenger was so powerful that fans felt he deserved an Emmy for the role, and that definitely proved how good an actor he was. Jordan has done various parts since Clemenger, including leading up the Rooster Teeth series Gen Lock, and the film Just Mercy, which got much acclaim. More is on the way for him, and we wouldn't be surprised if he knocked those roles out of the park too. Number 1. Mark Ruffalo. Mark Ruffalo was a later entry into the MCU as he replaced Edward Norton as Bruce Banner, aka the Hulk. But he quickly made the role his own. After the success of that, he got a lot of big roles in major films, including Spotlight, which got all sorts of nominations, Foxcatcher, where he was nominated for his acting, and winning an award for his acting in The Normal Heart. During his career, Ruffalo has been nominated for at least 1 Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony Award. One of a select group in history to have been nominated for, but not won, all 4 awards. Still, he's a really good actor, and when it comes right down to it, he'll be all right, as long as he doesn't Hulk out. So what do you think? What do you think of this look at the various Marvel actors and actresses who have donned the garb of various characters in the MCU and had their careers go off in various directions as a result? Which of them were you the most surprised about in terms of their rise in popularity and movie opportunities afterward? Do you have a dream casting for the MCU that you'd like to see happen? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the channel.